Welcome to Wicked Shizuku's Reviews, bringing you a southern perspective on books, movies, music, and much, much more. Stick around for a while, you just might hear something wicked. And hey everyone. So, I saw that I got a lot of views, not a lot of likes, that's okay. But I'm going to be bringing you something a little different today. This is just going to be a normal couple of reviews for a few books that I've done over the years. Some are old, some come from the college before college years, and some are newer. And we'll be going through this together. So I'll be getting to it. Okay. First, we're going to go over some older ones. And this was, my pre-rating system. I didn't have like a set, I wasn't following academic standards because I didn't even know the academic standards. Nothing. I just went into this all completely, la-di-da. So, anyhow, this is from Friday, July 15th, 2016. This was before Orange Man was even voted in. And it's a book called Doomed to Succeed by Dennis Ross. And it is a book about the U.S.-Israel relationship from Truman to Obama. So I had no idea who the hell Dennis Ross was. His name kind of rung a bell a little bit, but not so much because I didn't watch CNN, MSNBC. I didn't watch any of those. Didn't know who the hell this guy was. So I read this book completely blind to who he was, and then I looked into who he was, and it was like, oh, wow. So this book has a simple textbook format, and it takes the reader from Truman's policy progressing year by year to the now, which was, 2016 when I read it and when it came out. This describes the back and forth frustrations of America's relations to Israel. The later half of the book also includes Ross's involvement as early as the Nixon administration. Let y'all digest that for a minute. The Nixon administration. So this guy's been running around the fucking bureaucracy, just going willy-nilly. I'm going to place in tiny little policy changes here, there, and everywhere. Really? So, it was extremely enlightening, this book. A lot of people who also subscribe to a lot of the InfoWars network know that Roger Stone runs heavily back to the Nixon administration. But, I found something very, very strange within literature and political science hounds that have been running through and writing their own books all throughout this stuff. And I'm sorry to say that, Mr. Stone just wasn't involved a lot with Mr. Nixon during his campaign run during 72. To be able to find this, you would read Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail of 1972 by Hunter S. Thompson, a Rolling Stone author. Source check it. I've looked, I've checked. There's no mention of a Roger Stone in the campaign of 72 by Hunter S. Thompson. He's fairly... Well, hold on, let me find. Just a moment, I'll be right back. Yeah, look, this book. Fear and Loathing in the Campaign Trail of 1972. And I've read this book several times over the years. This is the second copy that I've bought. This was the second Charles trade-in. You know, so really, check. Okay, going on. Anyhow, though at times this book really angered me, he's pictured on the right, so you can understand who this guy is, and I'm even catching my own grammar mistakes now. How bad is this? Oh wow, I haven't read this in years. My questions. 1. I still have not puzzled out the why for Israel demanding the particular piece of land that their state sits on. Logistically, why? Wasn't enslavement by the Egyptians and the Holocaust enough punishment? I don't understand why people would want to inhabit a land surrounded by a race religion that says the Jews must die, setting aside that Israel claims that their holy land, that it is their holy land. The problem is that the religion of Islam also claims the same thing. There has to be a bigger reason why that place. It's like throwing a match in a powder keg, and the results is that it won't end well. 2. Instead of providing arms for any of these countries, why haven't we provided aid in agriculture, irrigation, and cattle only? Don't give them guns when they're too sorry to work a plow, because they would rather kill their people while screaming their zealotry. If food is the problem, teach them how to grow it. Teach a man to fish and all that, right? Another thing I just do not understand is why the Jews. Persecution has happened numerous times to their race over the course of history. I understand that it happened, but not the why it happened. And does it really boil down to religion, or is it only politics, their genetic makeup, Charles Dickens? My opinion pertaining to the book, but not limited to only the book. Stepping up on my soapbox. Put some serious thoughts into hydroelectric cars. It would dampen our dependence on Saudi oil. Come on. Back to the Future's time machine ran off garbage. Why the hell do we not have this tech already? It's 2016. Put my tax dollars into the science to make it happen. Chop, chop. 2016 is when I wrote this, everyone. 2. Stop arming foreign countries, period. There are many countries in severe debt to the U.S. Time to start writing some bills with interest. I have to pay my own bills. Why not to those who bought the arms to begin with? Also, nuclear power or weapons is just a bad idea. You don't hand a loaded pistol to a toddler, so why allow a dictatorship that availability? Solar and wind are costly option, but everyone will live if accidents happen. Oh, how I have changed in some of this line of thinking. I'm just a tad. Yeah, if you can find that in From Mothers to Monsters 1 through 6. The Chernobyl disaster and Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disasters are examples to keep in mind. America also needs to evaluate their dependence on it as well. If the Democratic Party wants to scream about the environment, then I want more project updates to these causes with quarterly progress reports on what was done and scientific readouts of how the project is benefited the environment from project's completion. 3. The United States is not a charity organization, and every single disaster relief has yet to be returned in good faith. Time for some quid pro quo, and stop throwing away my tax dollars. I didn't see the Chinese offering fiscal aid when Hurricane Katrina tore its way through Louisiana, or any monetary loans by what was once the Ottoman Empire to the relief of Winter Storm Sandy victims. Though every tsunami or major earthquake to hit Asia or the Middle East, the U.S. is just throwing money at them. Same with every other act of God to hit any other country. It isn't America's responsibility to act as Big Brother or Big Banker. 3. Legalize all drugs, regulate them, distribute, and tax them. Addiction is a medical condition. If the addict makes the decision they want to quit, they should be able to without being scared of losing their job or family due to the state institution policies by going to rehab. Besides, think of all the revenue it could generate. If an addict doesn't want to quit, we should leave it to the gods to sort it all out. They are going to use whether drugs are illegal or not. At least make sure they have clean needles and paraphernalia so they don't spread disease. This in turn will empty out our prison systems and leave plenty of rooms for the people who should be in, like rapists, frauds, child support dodgers, murderers, pedophile psychos, and corrupt politicians. Another positive outcome is that it would change in job disqualification. But at the same time, it will anger the entire black market. Someone much smarter than myself can sort out that nightmare. I wouldn't know where to start. This guy has a pretty convincing argument, and it takes you to One Chance, One Life, WordPress.com. Encourage people to go and find that particular article. It is very, very long. It's about maybe about 10 pages worth of scrolling. So, Number 5. Improve the medical availability in physical, rehabilitation, and mental ailments. Revisit the regulations on holistic medicine practice. Lots of ailments can be curbed with specific diets. This has had a lot of progress in the fight against cancer. At the same time, put a leash on pharmaceutical companies and reevaluate every licensed doctor that has been writing too many prescriptions. Honestly, with all of the Eagle Eye and Fusion Center shit going on, you, government, you can't pull one over on the citizens by turning a blind eye to what's going on. Also, the insurance companies need to be addressed. Premiums are ridiculous. Number 6. Since I have to pee in a cup to get a job, I think it's only fair that whoever applying for welfare for 5 kids that only sits around, drinks booze, takes pills, watches reality TV, or, as just an example, all day, every day, should have to do the same and stop treating your kids like checks. Then, individual states should regulate the child support laws and rates after proven paternity testing. It's kind of hard denying maternity, Make it one fair, flat rate due to the child's age with reevaluation appointment every year. Children grow and so do their needs, but make sure their needs are being met, i.e. food, shelter, clothing, health, and education. Receipts, girls. Keep your receipts. Keep your receipts. It's the easiest way to prove to your lawyer, to your judge, that you will have it, that you are doing it that you are doing it right on your end. That's just an observation. All right, this is a big one. Stop incarcerating people just because they are 1 month late due to being laid off from their job. A year without payment, then yes, incarceration is acceptable. No effort to find a job for a year shows that the person doesn't want to take responsibility for their children and should be advised to sign over 100% of the custody of the parent, suing custody, resulting in ending child support, making the suing parent get a job. End the baby daddy mama drama shit. Please. 7. Eliminate the math Common Core education system. It's holding back the children who excel, and I end up being the one teaching my children how I learned it. My son, the boy wonder that he is, understands it both ways, while my daughter doesn't get it until I show her the old way. Don't fix something that isn't broken to begin with. In its place, start requiring art, etiquette, and survival classes. Number 8. Many of the natural disasters that are happening due to floods and wildfires, I'm confounded by the lack of coverage and failure that our government has promised to provide. If it was such a bad idea to continue the Keystone Project, why not use the material remaining funding to reroute the water from known flood areas in drought? Repurposing the design to use water for irrigation purposes across many states, and farmers of the areas would drop food and cattle prices if crops yield excess. Plants need water to grow, not Bondo. But they have electrolytes. You're right. Plants need water from the toilet. Moving on. This is the basics of the basics in agriculture and economics. This would also subvert natural disasters such as Hurricane Katrina and torrential flooding of Louisiana in 2016. You have a chart for it, so why not make it happen? Why? Why haven't they done this? See? This is from the FEMA website. It's risk reduction, prevention, preparedness, disaster happens, purpose, or response, recovery, mitigation. It's supposed to be a never-ending cycle. Yet they are so awfully behind. And my ninth point was, last but not least, get out there and vote, people. And I said this so long ago, before I even went back to college. This was one of my last reviews that I did until I was just completely locked out of Goodreads. Okay. So I kind of got to. How am I going to explain this one? Okay. This one is more important, even though the day that I actually published this, I was working on this one before I reviewed Donald Trump Jr.'s book, Triggered. I really hope it doesn't set any off any alarm bells. I really, really hope it doesn't. But this one has to come in order because it's yeah. Big thought web. So, Saturday, September 23rd, 2016. On the road. 2 stars out of 5. So, this is definitely going to be one that I'm going to revisit. I'm going to read it with academic eyes now instead of reading it yeah. I'm gonna be very critical the next time that I go through this book. Very. Anyhow, konnichiwa. I love saying that. This is my second attempt at writing this review. The first time my computer crashed, so I'm already pretty hot over this hyped up piece of shit. So here's attempt number 2. Please forgive my ranting. My personal situation for the last month had been quite craptastic. Back when I met my husband, around 15 years ago, I promised that I would one day read this book, since he swore to me this was one of his all-time favorites. I tried reading it many times, and I felt mystically compelled to hold off reading this for either extenuating circumstances, extreme boredom, or severe depression. Warning: do not read when depressed. In the 13 years of our marriage, my husband's demons of addiction landed him in county incarceration for the first time. Even though I had been quietly attempting for years to move mountains and lasso the moon, just to keep him sober and out of jail. So having a month of loneliness and anxiety, and then at last peace, I was intent on finding out what this book was that has so influenced the man I've loved. The peace, I feel, is what is bugging me. Today I can officially say that I have kept to my word about having read this. Finally, this is where I deduced heinous fuckery most foul. I have two amazing children with him that are above the bar in their education through my constant efforts. For 11 years, my children and I have gone without so many times and sacrificed so much. The agonizing stress of living with my parents for 2 years after my husband discharged from active duty Army led to my appendix and spleen rupturing within a month, permanently taking me out of the labor job field. When jobs were oh so plentiful in Alabama, and right when I was finding a profession I enjoyed, which was insulation installation. Yet until now, I have refused to apply for disability. Our country is in enough debt, and I don't want to add to it. This was 3 years ago, and the pieces started to click into place. Missing money, staring off into space, pawning the car title without my knowledge, and the general neglect over the years, and the subsequent jail time. There's a whole essay that I have left out. Great. So, I can never make you understand. Wearing the same clothes over 6 years and never allowed to use the only car by myself. Honestly, I'm not a normal woman, and I have no personal greed. I'm just grateful to be alive. And books are free at the library. The library is up the street, as is the school, and like Matilda, we go quite often. Seems that it was finally time to do my own writing. Do I sound like the beginning of a Hallmark movie yet? Recovery is a daily fucking battle. And you have to get up and you have to put your armor on. Face it, then conquer it, rinse, repeat every damn day. The only thing is that you must want it for yourself and no one else. Fuck this shit. This book is persuasively persistent about romanticizing amphetamines, alcohol, benzodrine abuse, drug and domestic, and a life filled with constant debauchery. It seems that Hunter S. Thompson also shared a lot of these ideas in his writings as well. I was just talking about him. So, oh my God. This book makes me so angry. The misogyny, the sexism, extortion of the elderly, child abandonment, domestic abuse, and immorality. The main character and his insane sidekick cared little for anything except where their next drink fix or piece of tail was coming from. Though this is what it is to be an addict. It also seems that Kerouac cared little for pointing out over half of this shit is morally wrong on many levels, all while flaunting the rules of grammar, at times properly spelling or picking and sticking with a writing style. Trolls don't even come at me with it, but that was his point. No, that was just being lazy and doped up on benzodrine. This makes my inner grammar Nazi cringe. Curl into the fetal position and mindlessly scream expletives until the cows come home. This was Jack Kerouac's attitude towards love and women. Plus, most of the journey wouldn't fly today with law enforcement or the economy. It's the awful truth. Guys think with their downstairs brain, and us girls, we think with our hearts. What bothered me the most, though, was the kids in this book. You'll meet all of these kids, and suddenly Sal and Dean are off again. That sounds almost like Supernatural, but I digress. These two would step in and play dad for a while Mom worked her ass off to support their habits and then leave when the horse went lame or the milk cow dried up. Pet peeve of mine. Just so happens to be about roommates or friends that just use you as a stepping stone to step out. I shit you not, my husband's did exactly as Dean did to Sal in the hospital. Now I have no clue as to how I should proceed. Advise people, please give it up. One quote that I did like out of this particular book, though, and this is, mind you, I said pre-college. The only people are the mad ones, the ones who are mad to live, mad to talk, mad to be safe, desirous of everything at the same time. The ones who never yawn or say a commonplace thing, but burn, burn, burn like fabulous yellow Roman candles exploding like spiders across the stars. And in the middle, you see the blue center light pop, and everybody goes, "Oh, isn't that cool?" That's the one quote out of that entire book that everybody just coos over. Yeah. Moving on to the next one, and then it will finally make sense why. Now I am going in this order. So I started writing these particular reviews around July 15th. Yeah, July 15th. And this one was August 5th. Okay. And I always kind of start all of my reviews off that, with, I'm a frequent reader. And I am. Thoughts. I am a frequent reader of many memoirs, history, and literature. I was 35 years old when I returned to university. Yeah. Y'all have heard this. In order to learn how to become a better writer. I am a disabled mother of two and married to an Afghanistan veteran. I've done a vast amount of reading, listening, researching, and watching ever since I became disabled. However, I haven't had the financial opportunities to even think of incurring the type of debt that it requires to earn a degree in a dying field until 2 years ago. For years, I solely focused on my family and reading while remaining physically responsible in a throwaway culture. I stopped watching cable television around the time Glenn Beck was fired from CNN and only binge watch a season of a show that has caught my interest on Netflix. Well, I don't do that anymore. I've even cut that out now. I keep up with the news, though, through a variety of sources, as I am a student of history and literature. I read everything with a critical eye. I am a minimalist, and I wear my clothes and shoes until they have holes in them. I am a person that falls through the cracks no matter which administrative party has been in power and never qualify for minimal aid for medical services or food stamps. Yet, a meth or opioid addict who suffers from self-induced brain damage is qualified to have a monthly check. Where is that fair? I value traditions from a Southern Baptist background, yet I identify as a pagan and still love and respect the church family of my youth. Only in America can you claim to do so without being stoned in the streets. Only in America can the very ideal be accepted. I have known what I have wanted to do since I was a little girl, which is to be a children's fantasy novelist, and followed the advice of the king of horror, Mr. Stephen King. He spoke at a New England conference in the late 90s that it is essential to read in order to avoid plagiarism. This was 8 years before I became disabled, which brought my own writing to a screeching halt, until I was positive that I wouldn't fall for common tropes, misinformation, and keep up with scientific breakthroughs. I try to balance my reading by varying an educational view, then a conservative side, a liberal view, followed by an apolitical view. I counter horror with poetry and comedy. I am providing the previous information for those reading one of my reviews for the first time. I don't know if I have a glitch in my Audible, but does this guy repeat himself a lot. If this isn't a technical screw up on my end, then this is poor writing. It loops back around earlier in the book where I'm re-listening until new material. Interesting, although the lack of editing makes the complete work less compelling. I'm listening to some of the same zingers you hear when you watch his interviews, congressional hearings, rally introductions, and etc. I figured that he used the dictation function in a Word document and sat and talked for 12 hours. Listening to this book has created a personal, my cup runneth over, for an opinion. I have become so incensed that I'm compelled to write a review this long. It is now the first week of August, and Alabama is at the height of its first real wave of SARS-CoV-2. And I have left my home less than a handful of times since March 13th, when my classes were transitioned from an online format. My aim is to provide valid context to this review by volunteer my meager credentials. What the hell is up with the Trump family? I'm listening to Don Jr.'s book, and it's so fucking confusing. He jumps from topic to topic without any real structure. It's like he circles back from some earlier topic that has nothing to do with the other, and then he goes back into his childhood in Czechoslovakia. On another note, a lot of this book sounds like Don Jr. is on the seesaw of gratitude and glorification, or ridicule and insult flinging. He points at what the problems are, but doesn't explain the steps taken to create real solutions. This book is exhausting and tedious. Examples are vague and lack any depth, such as the envelope incident, or when he was accosted while he was with his children. I mean, what the fuck happened step by step? These situations are glazed over and to me seem unbelievable. Which agencies oversee the protection of the first family? How sheltered are they in the metaphorical cocoon of vipers? Final Fantasy 13. Easter egg for anyone out there. Honestly, I'm so damn tired of the name calling. It makes Don Jr. seem automatically biased. Though he doesn't point out policies that have worked, and he reveals much about the deals that were made for various real estate projects. From Don Jr.'s perspective, they are hardworking. They are a hardworking family. But what if their gold standard has driven up expectations, foreign and domestic, and inflated price on everything? Is his story relevant in order to relate with the blue-collar workers? I'm glad that Don Jr. has addressed big tech in this book. But this book was released pre-pandemic. The big tech congressional hearing was the day before yesterday. The Trump family has succeeded in exposing massive corruption in the bureaucracy, judiciary, and news media, which would have otherwise remained buried if Hillary Clinton had been elected president. However, the question remains, what is being done about it now, since it has been exposed? Interesting that Newt Gingrich was considered as VP. Holy hell. That is an enormous puzzle piece in the whole effing picture. He turned down the position in order to be more useful on the outside. What a genius political move, while keeping his reputation intact. It's interesting. The section on Brexit seems dismissive, and this is confusing. I thought it was an important issue, but this isn't expanded upon at all. Followed up by harsh criticism of the Republican Party. This was a frequent complaint that they heard, and they exploited it as a talking. They exploited it as a talking point because they had the platform, opportunity, and finances to push ahead. Experience with the American worker is how this family has come to power. Think of this like the merchants and the feudal system of England before the Renaissance. This is how career politicians have rotted our system, by exploiting the administrative, health, penal, and education systems by that attitude. Wow. I've got a lot of editing on this one to do. I have issues with chapter 8. It's like a Chris Jericho flowchart. Where does this checklist have any relevance? Who is enforcing these edicts? I mean, seriously, where the hell is this shit taking place? Small town Alabama won't tolerate effing behavior such as this unless you're in the big cities such as Birmingham or Atlanta next door. This a secondary issue I have is the lack of addressing addiction and the connection it shares with mental illness. He alludes to addiction when he writes about his uncle Fred Trump, but cuts off abruptly and doesn't bring the issue to the front again until he's criticizing the Democratic opposition at the end of the book. A third concern is an important issue to me. Not once was the issue of legitimately disabled people brought up and why. There is a difference between disabled veterans. I can testify that this system has been improved through the VA. While Trump was in, it was wonderful. It freaking had a boom in improvements. But ever since Joe got back in, yeah, it's the shitty run VA that it was before. But I'm going to continue with this review. That is not the avenue I am trying to highlight. What I mean are, what of the people born deaf or blind? People who have lupus or Crohn's disease. A family doesn't expect a mother to get breast or cervical cancer or a grandfather to be diagnosed with dementia, but it happens. Where does a family apply for aid? These are the types of things that a layman isn't able to find when there are mountains of information on policy to read before coming to a life-changing decision. And usually families have to hire an expensive attorney to argue the case. One thing I do not understand about this administration is why they haven't reviewed every branch of the alphabet soup and had the DOJ run counter investigations using metadata of the NSAs. Japan has an efficient way of restructuring their diet members, just a thought. In addition, there are more draconian measures, such as the Insurrection, Alien, and Sedition Acts of being reenacted, but heaven forbid shit actually get done. Oh, wow, that seems a little prophetic now, doesn't it? September 5th, 2016. Anywho, it can be protected because the national state of emergency has been in effect since mid-March. Government workers holding on to the same position for several years leave enormous room for workers to poison local level administrations. For example, bad teachers take a position at the county school boards. Police chiefs that make dirty deals, sex trafficking by letting truckers just to pass through their local stretch of highway for a price. All the while, the community's bridges are crumbling. Local. Go through the local alphabet first, not the last. Voters, hold your local officials accountable first, not last. There's a lot of detail about the election of 2016, yet he's quite quiet on the measures being taken towards 2020. I do not see how the DOJ can't use these books as on-record testimonies, and why the authors aren't held liable for slander and defamation. Junior also name drops a lot. Normal average Joes don't have the security to go from job to job just because their parents don't have that type of flexibility or financial cushion that this family has. Although I do respect that he knows the business and construction codes and laws. He relates the immigration of his predecessors and the history of massive immigration and why it's economically bad to have open borders. Yes, I really got up on my soapbox for this one. Sure did. So he also takes the opportunity to highlight grievances against the squad and other domestic congresspersons, such as Nancy Pelosi, Jerry Nadler, Maxine Waters, Doug Jones, and other bureaucrats, while he is laying out exactly what they did to win with their work ethic and new innovations in social media. There it is right there. Their innovations in social media. So I will refer you to, let's see, 3 or 4 episodes. If you're watching me for the first time, you need to check out my review for From Mothers to Monsters articles. That needs to be one of the first ones that you refer to, and then go to Glenn Beck versus Alex Jones, who had the better Great Reset book. And then what's the next episode that you should get more information on the social media stuff? Reviewing Victim of the Swamp. So I'll leave it at that. About the social media, I'm not going to delve into that too heavily at the moment. A flaw that has been brought to the forefront since the emergence of the pandemic is that they are weak without a crowd. DJT figured it out by using Vince McMahon's tricks from the World Wrestling Entertainment industry. Thus, this flaw has had a blaring effect on the overall morale of the campaign, the voters, and Trump himself. I know I will never be able to hear the Village People's Macho Man the same way ever again. The media is a problem. Oh my God, is that supposed to be a surprise? They have been since well before the Clintons ever left office. And now I since writing this article, I found it goes back a lot further. But I didn't know that at this time. I'm just going by off of the knowledge that I had at this time. So, they have been since well before the Clintons ever left office and the birth of the internet, before it was ever noticed because of the limit of networks, newspapers, and channels. Cable television and internet connectivity in the late 80s, early 90s were responsible for many millennials' advancement and degradation of morality. This has become a more prevalent topic among speakers such as senior fellows from the Hoover Institute, Thomas Sowell, Candace Owens, and Charlie Kirk. Don Jr. also mentions the writers Ben Shapiro, Glenn Beck, Victor Davis Hanson, Mark Levin, Andrew Klavan, and Tucker Carlson, whom I have read several of their op-eds and later books. There has been unfair coverage from every prism on this family, so it isn't a surprise that many real issues have to take place behind the left's agenda to remove the great disruptor. Their true agenda was to carry on with the business as usual attitude, while the fringes can be compared to the country of Goa from the manga One Piece, Ichiro Oda, 1999. Riots sparked by the death of George Floyd immediately reminded me of a scene where the king arranged for the slums of the outside of the city to be burned by the inhabitants of the slums while promising them to access to their clean city. In the end, he double-crossed them. Some of the fictional and real-world parallels Oda writes and illustrates are downright eerie. Donald Trump blocked this agenda ordered by the American people. There's a popular sign used in the Deep South stating that diapers and politicians should be changed off them for the same reason. I suggest that all fellow citizens do their civic duty. Our ancestors fought and died for us to have the right to do so. I can't predict what will happen in November of 2020. The last 4 years have been so exhausting to keep up with. And to me, watching anime, the news, and history political lectures is a hobby. The sheer meanness from both sides needs to come to an end. My plea to the world is just be civil to each other again. Yes, I want a debate, but I wish for it to return to where there is a modicum of decorum, equal justice, and due process, no matter what your status is. In the spirit of fairness, I will also be reading Mary Trump's book after this. I also have several other books on my agenda as well, looking into books by John Bolton. This is, yeah, finally we're getting to that review. John Solomon, Greg Jarrett, Peter Schweitzer, Rosemary Gibson, Peter Zahon, and many others related to politics and geopolitics. What can I say? I'm an overachieving English history major. I leave Sean Hannity the responsibility to sing the president's praises. They are too numerous to list, and also just published in his new book. I'm tired and I've said my piece. Yeah. So, finally, we're finally getting to reviewing The Room Where It Happened, a White House memoir by John Bolton. So some people might be thinking, who the hell is John Bolton? Okay, because family members that shall not be named, they don't even know who the first person is in the cabinet, or positions, or people that have been running throughout the bureaucracy or the State Department for so many years. So here's a picture of the guy. That's him. He should be recognizable to a lot of people that do follow news and whatnot. However, moving on, he's 74 years old. He was the national security advisor for Trump for a little while. And now he's a political commentator and everything. So that's the simple Google search on John Bolton, and it found like all of these results in only 0.57 seconds. So, not hard to find the guy. So, this particular memoir he wrote, The Room Where It Happened, is play off of the Broadway Hamilton. Everybody's already heard the song. I don't have to get, Okay, John Bolton, former National Security Advisor of the United States. I mean, this guy is... So, readability is 4 out of 10. Academic is 8 out of 10. Content is 8 out of 10. Entertainment value, 0. Oh, nada. Goose eggs. Goose eggs. The reason for such a low ranking is Mr. Bolton's bitter bias for the traditional bureaucratic system and anything that threatens that system. He is a stickler for the rules and the way the system works. Bolton, I think he really loves this country. Unfortunately, I also don't think that many have read this with a completely unbiased perspective. I noticed that there were many instances when Mr. Bolton states about the chaos of the Trump administration, but he is very succinct to say whom he had a meal with, sometimes with a snide pomposity or poignant explanations of the history of why things were happening, but he wasn't able to communicate this effectively. Frankly, as much as Mr. Bolton likes steering the war machine, I think that he might stick to writing political history with a hands-off approach. I liked learning some of the things I didn't know about, i.e. the Korean War, which was really interesting bit. I intend to dig a little further into this section again at a later date. There were a lot of treaties that are not common knowledge, which is a dereliction in the Alabama education system, and shame on the bureaucracy for not having tidier records. I'm unsure how to express my unhappiness with the last 2 presidential cycles. I'm happy that I realized this during the McCain Obama race. You see, I'm just a little country girl that likes the news in the background while I read, so hopefully you can understand why it pisses me off that it seems someone is pissing on my lawn. This man, while a fucking blowhard, does have three-fourths legitimacy when it comes to chronological events, which are verified down to the dates and citations. The other quarter of his commentary is a 50-50 split within itself. Fair criticism because national security and those sections were interesting. However, it seems that Bolton wants the reader to believe that our bureaucracy isn't technologically savvy, and we know that's not the case. They want to fucking put in palm scanners. Don't tell me that load of crock. They have plenty of quantum computing already going. Phew. This could be a number of things, but I shall not extrapolate on this. This leads to a rabbit hole and a can of worms, and I do not want my review to be polluted with any Q conspiracy, Alex Jones rantings, or mainstream media bias. Bolton himself is a mover and shaker of history, a bishop on one board and a rook on another, but he always wanted to be a knight, in a way. If we would want to compare him to the Potterverse, he would be a Lupin Snape hybrid in our political system with a Gandalf motif to layer on even more complexity. Confused yet? Good. You should be. I read this 1 year into the Biden administration. Fair criticisms of the Trump administration. Then he has some pretty good points here. Mixed messaging is dangerous for our national security. I agree, but rudely insulting the office of presidency is unacceptable behavior. Is Bolton's ultimate goal to be president or national security director? I don't think that Mr. Bolton accepts the rejection of his advice well. Descriptions of people, personalities were very below the belt, such as characterizations of Eric and President Trump. There was an interesting insight into Jared Kushner's role within the family, though. And the Trump dynasty shall be an articulately studied topic in history for years to come. So, Bolton's flaw comes to this. He does not think outside of the box. And that is dangerous when you just want war for the military-industrial complex. There are some who would say too much candor, but I think that he is correct in his criticism when it comes to the State Department and the European Union. I was also very surprised to learn the context of what led Nikki Haley to write her book, With All Due Respect, which happens to be on my to-be-read list. I need to read that. Eventually, I'll get to it, so stay tuned. Bolton stayed methodical by telling the orders of events. He is very biased in his criticisms. He believes that every individual is less intelligent than he is, and he lashes out through his book to clearly exhibit exactly how disconnected the bureaucracy is from the will of the people, and their utter disregard for our wish for prosperity and to bring a safer future. This was, is, and always will be a problem, yet there are no cut and dry solutions to the sworn system, and that is dangerous to our founders' vision, which Hamilton, Jay, and Madison warned in the first 10 Federalist Papers. Hamilton especially feared the corruption of the elites, but was a contradiction by wanting strict law and order, because he lived in an urban setting. Mr. Bolton, as well as President Trump, both relies on people's resumes too much. This is a fault within the system and a rot in our culture. This behavior has been exploited by a cast of characters that numbers up to 10,000 individuals directly within their contact list. Think of this as the biggest spider's web with a player at every spoke of the spindle of the spider weaves. It's complicated. It's messy, my loves. We might never know how awful the damage to our international credibility is after the years 21 and 22. I just hope that our countrymen would please step out of their comfort zone and speak up and choose new leaders all across the board, down to the local bean counter if needs be. Our roads haven't been fixed. The media keeps pushing vaccine ads through coercion and threats. Interesting points, though. John Bolton certainly brings a solid list that can be triply verified, but Bolton neglects to mention any staffers or secretaries. 2. In a way, I find that suspicious. Does he not have an office? 3. I think that Bolton couldn't keep up with the change Trump was demanding. Business is a different monster than geopolitique, nor does it have any patience. Someone approaching this from a multi-prismed variety of media will be shocked because this is a very jarring to read this man's work. It is, though, very confusing what the agenda for the offices were and are. Aren't the raison d'etre of every agency meant to further the prosperity of the country and the freedoms of citizens who are supposed to be their highest priority? 5. After reading this book, it doesn't seem that it isn't even considered, but used as an old narrative that sways the vote every 2 years. This serves as a fractured relationship with every country upon this planet. People like Mr. Bolton cannot stay out of the political sphere, yet I don't understand his motivations. What does he not have? I mean, he likely owns a home and a working car and probably lives a comfortable life. Why does he insist upon warmongering instead of addressing the variables that cause the problems? I think that the government has come to rely so heavily on standard operating procedures that they have handicapped the possibility of the government operating effectively. 8. I don't think it is healthy for any administration to keep any employees from any previous administration once you've worked for one regime. How can you prove your loyalty to a new one? This is the rub. It would be too costly to retrain staff, and the eventuality that state secrets be leaked or sold to our adversaries. Bolton reveals that careers such as his must bow out gracefully, with no possibility that players such as him will come out of retirement outside of an advisory position. Be prohibited. They shouldn't have media platforms, pundit positions to boost their special interests or causes. They shouldn't collect a retirement above the common social security check they impose on normal citizens. I also cannot agree with the tactic that Bolton suggested when it came to Syria. I agree that the enemy combatants' equipment and fighters should be eliminated, but not at the expense of innocent civilians, no matter the country, age, politics, sex, or creed. 10. How much are correspondents paid per segment? I mean, that's really a question, everyone. I mean, I've always wondered exactly how much do they make when they show up on Fox News smiling and they're saying, "Hi, Dana," or "Hi, Greg," or who else are a few more? Sandra Smith and Bill Hemmer, and let's see, there's Chuck Todd and Joe and Mika Brzezinski over on MSNBC and the other ones. CNN, what used to be Don Lemon, but he got the boot, right? Who else? Who else? While I'm thinking here, I'm gonna smoke half a cigarette now. I'm quite perplexed. I want to know, how much money did Dan Bongino give up being a Fox correspondent? How much did Tucker lose? Did Tucker really lose a lot? No, and he doesn't really care about money, as I understand it. I've been following Tucker for god awful a long ass time. So, Even before, I followed Tucker when he was at MSNBC. Everybody, why do you think that I kept jumping everywhere? Because Tucker did. So did Glenn Beck. And then you have like the censorship of Alex Jones, which I was like, oh well, that won't be good. The exact day that they did it to him, I was like, oh yeah, this is not good. Yeah, that was a bad move. Uh, Everybody on the left, that was a bad move because they're only having a springboard effect and a bounce back. Hmm. But yeah, I mean, do they work on a contract? Do they have flat fees? Or is it per segment? Are they paid per segment like the political pundits? How much is Jason Chaffetz? Or oh God, who's the weasel guy? Trey Gowdy. How much are they making on their little weekend shows? I mean, Fox must be just melting down right now, trying to come up with somebody as charismatic. And Hannity, he just doesn't have that old charm that he used to. Sucks getting old, doesn't it? Sucks when makeup just no longer hides those lines anymore, right? Yeah. Bit of background on my part is that I've been aware of Mr. Bolton since his days of Papa Bush's administration, and that does not mean that I take his words as gospel, but I do value his talent for thoughtful observations on treaties, how the process works, breaking them down, and educating. What I don't like is that our State Department is rife with excess, as it is corruption. As I'm speaking from merely the perspective of an undergraduate senior pursuing the dual degree of history and English, wife to a veteran and mother of two teens. I frankly never want this man to hold a position of power ever again. For his sin of pride, vanity, and responsible for millions to have suffered from his decisions, we the people need to start passing up on services. Ayn Rand embodies this spirit with one question: who is John Galt? Now, let me also caution with Stephen Moore's recent quote: people should not fear their government, the government should fear their people. I write this not as a threat, but as an observation because of the frightening correlation between our country resembling the period of the Brothers Gracchi and the fall of the Roman Republic. The situation has worsened as presently all efforts of changing are opportunity. I also think that we should question anyone who has taken Sir Pellinore's fashion sense of mustaches as anyone we should give our proverbial kingdom keeper from the Sword and Stone. I don't trust him advising anyone in positions of power. He merely wants to destroy, but for what side other than his own, I can't truly say. And that was The Room Where It Happened by John Bolton. Now, it was in an audiobook format, so in these type of reviews, it's pretty much going to be rip roaring ranting. Um, but when I do have actual physical books, if I have the physical book in front of me, or if I get the ebook versions, I will be able to bring you actual quotes and notes and all of that good stuff. But when I listen to audiobooks, it's just going to come out streamlined how the review is going to be conducted. But this is one that I'm actually going to buy a physical book of. I want the records of some of these treaties that he talks about. One of them is the Kyoto Agreement, which that was just downright wow. I didn't know that would happen, and if this happens, that happens. Yeah, everybody, y'all need to actually see what happens if Taiwan declares independence. Okay, see, the way I understand it is that if they declare independence, yay, we're free. If they do that, China invades. And they have every reason to, because nobody will come and help. This is why that when China makes all of those celebrities and whatnot sit there and kowtow to them, like John Cena, for example. Well, the reason for that is that they're going to demonetize everything that they throw behind him. Well, he's got to make a living, right? However, at the same time, if China was to invade Taiwan first without Taiwan declaring independence, then it would be the responsibility of NATO to go to their rescue. Yeah, find more on it, everybody, at The Room Where It Happened by Mr. Bolton. He goes into it. Very, very detailed, and it's like a step-by-step plan. And it's like, oh my. And what am I to do? I'm a little piss poor peon. You know? I'm just sitting here reading books. I read this shit so you don't have to. You got busy lives, right? But if you've watched and if you've liked this episode, please give me a thumbs up for the algorithm. And like, subscribe, share, do all of those good things. It'll help me out and be able to try to get my message out, whatever that damn message may be. I don't know. Maybe you'll get a new article of From Mothers to Monsters, and I'll be able to shoot that for you soon. Yes, so I hope you have a good afternoon and have a pleasant evening and sleep well and pleasant dreams. Good night, everyone.